2, okay. The nice thing is, you don't need any experience for it in order to follow my talk. The other question I would like to ask, do you have any experience with Hyvä? Yeah? And who doesn't? Okay. It's also not a prerequisite in order to follow this talk, so please remain seated. I hope Martin can fix the difficulties. Yes? Okay. Let's go. First, a little bit about me and the history of our Magento team at I.O. I started in 2009 in Eindhoven, in the company, the previous name of our company where I worked before we were named I.O. was Isaac, or Isaac. Yeah, I'm only mentioning it once. I started there as a Java architect, and within 1 week I switched to being a PHP architect because there was a new thing, and it was called Magento. And people were really enthusiastic about it. And they asked, well, we need someone to do something with it. Do you want to do that? I said, well, okay, let's see. So I started there with a small team of 3 people. Me as an architect, then 1 backend developer, 1 frontend developer. And now in 2023, we're still doing Magento, only with a bigger team, over 30 people. At first, it was only the Magento team, and it has expanded to a special interest group with front-end and back-end expertise spread over PHP and front-end chapters. Most of our builds are using Magento open source, but we also have some commerce projects, or Magento Commerce, Adobe Commerce, I don't know the name. Willem knows much more about it and has a much... Enterprise, that was it. So my personal Magento experience, I started with Magento 1.3. So I'm a bit of an old Magento guy. That's why I also have an old Magento 1 t-shirt. I hope to get a Hyvä one today. So most of my experience is with Magento 1. I also jumped on Magento 2, but I was a little bit scared because of the first 2.0 and 2.1 versions, which were not that stable as I was hoping for. But in the end, I jumped on the Magento 2 train, and I'm still working with Magento now. Oh yeah, I have a disclaimer, put on top of the slide. I am a backend developer, and I'm giving a talk about frontend, so bear with me. So the topic of today is everyone's favorite Magento frontend called Luma. Not Hyvä, no, Luma. This is the default frontend you get when you install Magento. And I have yet to come across a single person who likes this frontend, from a technical point of view. For me, 3 things stand out. It uses outdated technologies, it's overly complex, and it has performance issues. So, what's outdated? Well, if you look at the front-end stack, almost everything. So, for instance, we have require.js, which is now end of life for almost 3 years. We have Knockout, which is end of life for almost 2 years. We have jQuery, but, well, you don't need it anymore with proper modern browsers. And we have Less. And, well, at the release of Magento 2, in the end of 2015, Less was almost surpassed by SAS at that time. And I think that is still the case. Complexity. Yeah, I put my emotions in the top right of my slides. So if you can't see it on my face, you can see it in the slides. For me, the complexity of Luma is mostly in the way JavaScript is handled. JavaScript is put into really small components, and one of the most horrible things is the concept of UI components. You can summarize this in one sentence, which I found on the Magento forum. UI components are a freaking mashup of random XML configuration, Knockout.js with HTML templates, Require.js, and jQuery widgets. And they are a pain to work with, as Vinay eloquently tried to describe in a Magento GitHub issue. In 2016, yeah. It still applies. Then performance. Well, also the way JavaScript is handled by a Luma team is an issue. If you open any Magento front-end page and you go to your network tab, and you click on the JS subtab, then you see hundreds of JavaScript requests with really small JavaScript files. This is a screenshot of what happens when you open the standard checkout page. It has over 300 requests and over 6 megabytes of data that is being transferred, which is totally absurd. So, what to do about it? Well, first of all, what can you do with outdated, unpopular technology that's hard to replace? Yeah, well, cry a little bit and get over it. What can we do about the complexity? Well, if something's complex and you know a lot about it, then it becomes simpler. So we did some training. Did some Gerio training about Magento front-end development, and it was really helpful to learn to work with Luma. But the performance thing was a different thing, because the idea is that, well, if you have performance issues, you try to optimize. But how can you optimize this whole JavaScript mess? Well, you can try to bundle all your requests. That's a standard feature of Magento. But then your number of requests decreases, but your request size, your total request size, increases. And if you want to combat that, you need to do some advanced tricks, which is really cumbersome and takes a lot of time to get right. So we looked at alternatives. One of the alternatives was the blank SAS team by Snowdog. Is it using modern technology? Well, at the time, yes, for generating CSS, but no for the whole JavaScript mess. Is it less complex? Well, maybe for CSS, but not for JavaScript. Does it have better performance? Well, no. It doesn't solve the issues we have. But then the headless hype train started to roll. And we looked into Vue Storefront and Magento PWA Studio, and it had a promise of using really modern techniques. So that was nice. But is it less complex? Well, no. You now have two systems that you have to keep in sync, and they need to work really well together. And that's not always the case. So I stole a slide of Fabio Smengler of Intedelnet. And he said in one of the first Hyvä meetups that they were trying to get some Vue Storefront projects out of the door. And there were lots of problems. I took the slide because he has a SpongeBob meme. So there were the problem was that because of all kinds of unexpected issues that popped up, they couldn't make the deadline, and that was an issue. So they needed to skip a few deadlines. But then, luckily, these headless alternatives have better performance, right? Well, no. I was also a bit surprised that this was one of the promises, at least of Magento PWA Studio. But if you look at Google Core Web Vitals statistics, then you see that the performance of Vue Storefront and PWA Studio is worse than the performance of Luma. Thanks for Willem for pointing this out. So, what to do next? Well, we tried to create our own team. So the idea was that let's replace all the less stuff and replace it by Bootstrap SaaS and get rid of all the JavaScript bloat. So the first thing is doable, and the second thing, well, in the end, we decided, well, this is way too much work. We have to stop this. So we had some nice Jira tickets, but we had to close them as won't do's. So now what? At some night, I think, I was browsing Twitter, a Twitter feed, and I came across this tweet by Petra Blaakmeer, who is called Meiji Magento Face recently. We've been working on a rebuild for a client built on Hyvä over the past few weeks. It's as fast and fun to work with as Willem Wigman claims. This revolutionized Magento 2 frontend. Forget about PWA. We believe this is the way forward. So I was immediately interested in this. And he was referring to Willem's talk at Reacticon, which I immediately watched because I couldn't attend the conference itself. This gained my interest, so I didn't know how fast I could place an order for Hyvä teams. So I looked up my old email when this was. It was 5 days after Reacticon. The email is still alive, only the picture is missing. It's the Magento logo now. So this was still a pre-order, so Hyvä Teams was not released at that time, in the end of 2020. But we gained access to the pre-release version, and we created a proof of concept. And the findings were, well, I think in my case, phenomenal after all these failed attempts we did previously. So we noticed that, hey, this is really simple. You only need to learn Tailwind CSS and Alpine.js, and you can have a working site. It's also blazing fast, because the performance is great out of the box. There is no optimization you need to do. And whenever we run into problems, we got really fast and quality feedback from the Hyvä team. At that point, there were some challenges. It wasn't 100% yet finished. There wasn't any support for third-party plugins yet, and there was no checkout. But we went ahead and we wanted to try this out on a real live client project. So what we did, we tried to convince a client by creating a working demo. So we took a standard Magento install and added all of the product set of 100,000 of products. And we showed them how this Hyvä team site looked like and performed. Well, they were also really enthusiastic. So they said, okay, well, it looks really simple. If you look at the HTML, we can even create our own pages with our own styling. The performance is great. Hey, what about the third-party modules? Do you need to create some custom code for that? So, well, the answer was yes. And hey, where is the checkout? But we got to go. So we have rebuilt 2 of their Magento 1 sites in Magento 2, using, at that point, the first official version of Hyvä Teams was released. And we used Luma Checkout as a fallback checkout. And the nice thing is that this was what Bavo also mentioned. It is within budget and time. So for a first project, that was really nice. So we went on and did some more projects. I don't know if I counted right, but we have at least 5 different clients for which we launched several websites. And all of these builds have been more predictable than builds based on Luma or headless. The only thing was that the lack of having a checkout that continued to be a pain point, sadly. So what to do with the checkout? There was already a checkout solution by Hyvä called the React Checkout. It was even, I think it was even older than Hyvä Teams itself. So we could opt for that. But the thing was that it used a different technology stack than Hyvä Teams. So you need to have two different front-end stacks for one website. Another thing was that it didn't really work out of the box, more kind of a toolbox. And we heard that there was another checkout solution in the works. So we were interested in that. What is this MageWire thing? This Hyvä MageWire checkout. Well, the idea was that this is a checkout solution with exact same technology stack as Hyvä Teams, but with one addition called MageWire, which is a Magento port of Laravel Livewire made by Willem Wigman. And it should work out of the box. So, just like with Hyvä Teams itself, it immediately gained my interest, so we joined the beta program. And we hoped that there would be a release candidate soon, so we waited a little bit, and sorry about that. And we thought, well, okay, should we wait for the 1.0 release or should we go live with a beta version? I rather preferred the first one, but our clients couldn't wait, and honestly, I couldn't wait either. So we went live with a beta release. We did apply some patches, and we got some great help from Willem Wigman to get it up and running for our case. So, next steps for our Hyvä sites that didn't have a checkout. So we're planning to upgrade these beta releases to a stable release as soon as they are out, and all the other sites that still have the Luma fallback checkout, I want to upgrade them as soon as possible to the Hyvä checkout. So we've been working with Hyvä for a few years now, and I'm really happy with the way we can collaborate. And we also applied some patches for improvements. So we've been rewarded as a Hyvä contributor as of this year. So I'm really happy about that. Okay, to conclude, my enthusiasm for Magento was waning a little bit because of this Luma issues, even though I'm a backend developer. People were complaining all the time over how horrible it was to work with the Magento frontend. But Hyvä really reignited that enthusiasm for me and also for my colleagues. I see it also now with Hyvä MageWire Checkout as a full replacement for Luma on Magento open source. And we use it as a default frontend for all of our Magento builds. But we also support Adobe Commerce. In fact, we even use Hyvä on one of our Adobe Commerce sites right now. It works really well because they don't use any commerce features yet. But when they will, we might run into issues. So I hope Adobe Commerce support will be added in the near future. It's beginning. There are some beginnings, but there are some things on the checklist I saw. I want to conclude with a big thanks to the Hyvä team and the whole community for making this possible. And if you want to know more, what I would recommend is just go to demo.hyvä.io and you can see right away how fast and simple Hyvä is. And there are pointers to the Hyvä site and documentation and everything. So, I want to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Aad. Are there any questions for Aad at this moment? Raise of hand. No? Everything clear? Everyone good? People
Pavo, could you do that intro again? We had some technical difficulties, and the people at home couldn't enjoy this magical intro you gave. So please.
It was this at the top of my head. So
It was top of the head, but maybe you could figure out something new while I'll change the PowerPoint presentation in the meanwhile, and
okay.
And let's pretend like this conversation never happened.
This never happens. Okay.
All right. Again.
From the bottom of my head, I'm going to rewind, and then I'm going to fast forward, and then I'm going to press play, and then Martin is going to do some magic. Okay, welcome for the people at home who didn't hear my intro, which was very special. Oh, there you are. There you are at the camera. Welcome to this Hyvä Meetup from the Coven of Wisdom. And this evening was three talks, 2 from I.O. and 1 from Hyvä themselves. So I'm very glad they are here. So for me, my first encounter with Hyvä was from Aad, who in the autumn of 2020 came to me and said, well, I have found the solution to all our front-end problems, and here it is. See this website, see this blazing fast Magento front-end, and it works perfectly. I said, well, Aad, this isn't finished, right? They didn't have it all covered. Yeah, but they will. And I said, yeah, okay, but when they have, it will be as slow as all the other ones. So, I don't know, but be my guest. Follow this thread, and we'll talk to you in a few months. And we did. And he showed me this first site that was really working with the first version of Hyvä. And so I actually delivered my first site last year with Hyvä, and I'm very pleased with it. So thanks, Aad, for the heads up and your perseverance in pushing this into our organization. And well, we enjoyed your talk. So very entertaining and very educational. And for now, maybe we want to get a drink, and then the class will start, because he is the pioneer here.
Well, I'm sorry, but if I look at the program, I see Aad, class from IO, and then we get drinks.
Ah, damn.
Are you thirsty? So if anyone wants to get drinks, be really quick. And then
Everyone's running. Okay, so Aad, Klaas is really the one that uses the Hyvä the most.
Hyvä.
I just keep saying it wrong because that's funny. You get it? Okay. So a big hand for Klaas, and he will talk you through what it actually does, right?
What it's like. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to talk about what business as usual, BAU, what it's like working with Hyvä. And I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about Magento front-end development. I'm not going to show some code, not doing live coding either. And I'm going to talk about developer happiness. Aad already asked about Magento 2 developers here, and there are plenty of it. So even if there's some little code, which there is, you'll understand. This is about development, and it is for developers, but it's also relevant for shop owners and tech leads and project managers. I'll tell you why. So what is business as usual like working with Hyvä? It's nice. It's nice. This is me. Same head. Klaas, that's my name, yeah. And for me and my colleague, front-end developers in our commerce team, business as usual is creating great web shops, adding features, improving user interaction. I'm a senior Magento front-end developer. and I've been working with Magento since 2015, since I came to work here. And I have been happily working with Hyvä since, I said April 22, but it was earlier. I think by January I was already coding in Hyvä. So first up, I said I was going to talk about developer happiness. So why am I sad when I'm not developing with Hyvä? Well, I'd already highlighted some points. But there's more. See, yeah, UI components. It's the most dreadful part, but also it builds slowly. The developers here will probably recognize Grunt, which is a tool to build. It takes about 20 seconds per store view to run it locally, compared to Hyvä, where it takes just 1 second. It's tedious. It contains all deprecated, obsolete tools such as Require.js and Knockout and Less and Grunt and Prototype. I didn't say it. Yeah, Prototype. Magento Luma contains Prototype. And maintaining CSS style sheets, I did not think that I would start to dislike that, but by now I do. And it's hard to optimize. It's optimizable to a certain point, and then you have to drop JavaScript. All those tickets you've seen from Ad, they were my investigation tickets. And I spent quite some time figuring out if it was feasible to remove all JavaScript and build it ourselves. No. So what makes me happy? Well, Hyvä themes. It is easy to learn. It's hard to convey people just by saying it is easy, but I'll give some examples. I'll dive into that. We get quick results. Definitely. And this at the cost of minimal frustration. Doesn't even sound like Magento. But so these three aspects, they in turn yield an increase in developer happiness. These three aspects make life better. It's not a picture of that guy. It's just a picture of a monk. But so the Stefan guy, he did some research on developer happiness. It's the values of developer happiness and how to create it. And the conclusion is to let developers code. Developers want to create. They want to set out what they achieve what they set out to do. They want to exceed goals. They want to see results. So the developer happiness, it's important, of course. For everyone, it's important to feel happy at their job. But developer happiness also leads to more productivity and better efficiency. So this is great for product managers, store owners as well. Store owners, happy developers care more. This has been researched. It's not my imagination. Happy developers care more about the product they create. So this creates more engagement from developers to the product of shop owners. And of course, this is low-hanging fruit. Happy developers stick around. And it might be very obvious, but it was very hard to find front-enders enthusiastic for working with Magento, because you have to have quite some perseverance and drive to be willing to work on Luma front-end if there are very cool projects were built in Vue or React or something modern, anything else. So, okay, let's break it down. It's easy to learn, I said. Why? Well, Hyvä consists mainly of two frameworks. So it's built upon two frameworks: Tailwind CSS and Alpine JS. One for the CSS, one for the JavaScript, and that's it. So that's no more required JS jQuery prototype. It's this is it, and its documentation. Well, these tools are simple and intuitive, and the documentation is great. For anyone who's ever read the documentations of Magento, got lost, think the opposite. That's it. In a couple of hours, you'll know enough to start coding and to start working on a Hyvä front end or Hyvä project. In these three projects, those developers they got a few hours of reading into Tailwind CSS and Alpine JS, and they got along. And so we finished these projects within budget and time. Rookie Hyvä developers, and they liked it. They enjoyed it. So that's nice. Quick results. This is mainly why I like my day-to-day job working with Hyvä. Getting quick results. There'll be no code. Okay. So the fast and simple development cycle. As I said. Sorry. Code. Oh, there's code. Yeah, you can run it. This is trivial for any other project, any other Vue or React or name anything modern. There will be a very fast build the development cycle, such as an npm run watch now is. It's just code, refresh, result. So compared to Luma, where it took about 20 seconds to compile the less to CSS for store view, now it only takes 1 second, so it's so much faster. Alpine JS, also easy. You only have to write business logic. So that there's no overhead, there's no boilerplating, there's no dependencies you have to manage. So there's no required JS config for those who know. And try to forget it, yeah. Sorry, I lied. There's code. It's not mine. This is from the getting started page of Alpine. And even for non-Alpine JS developers or non-Magento even for non-developers, this is readable. See, there's a button. It toggles being open, and there's a div with contents, which is shown when it's open. And if you click outside of it, open is false, so it's hidden. So there's a drop-down. Easy. And so this is a very simple example, but there are little limitations because eventually it is just JavaScript. So you can make this as complex as you want. So we have some complex features now built with Alpine JS, which are so much easier to maintain than the implementation we had in Magento 1 based upon Knockout. So this allows developers to focus at the task of hand. to focus on the functionality to get results quickly. Tailwind CSS. Why is Tailwind CSS so easy? Well, okay, so or any other utility classes in general, it is only effective where applied. So there's no style sheets. It's just in the HTML template, and only there where it's applied it is effective. Which means, oh yeah, no, that's right. There's an example. More code. Excuse me. So this is an example of Tailwind CSS. I say Tailwind CSS, but there's no style sheet here. So for those who are not who don't know Tailwind CSS, it's only based on these utility classes. There's no. Is there a pointer? No, there's no pointer. There's a pointer. Oh. I should not press any button now. Just try to figure it out. No. Okay. So it's just utility classes. So it is only effective where applied, which means that you don't break stuff you don't touch. That's a real big thing, because it is a thing with CSS in general. If you're using classes, actually cascading style sheets, then the usage of classes is depending on the context, on the selectors. And you may start off with a very properly built component, but eventually some classes will be used in different contexts and behave differently. Or you want that great sparkly CTA button from the PDP, and you also want it on the limited sales promotion page, but there it doesn't work exactly, so you have to be more specific in your CSS selector, and another exception has been added. And this continues iteration over iteration. And another thing with Magento is that these CSS classes can be used in CMS content, and then you've totally lost control over where your CSS is used and how it's used. And this is not relevant for Tailwind, because Tailwind is only effective where applied. So this again gives confidence to do the task at hand. Even backenders are doing styling now. That's great. It's great from a resourcing point of view, because when I'm having a day off as frontender and my colleague Bart has to do some backend and a little front end, he can just go ahead and do it without the fear of breaking anything else. And we do it quickly as well. Then there's one thing I have to mention. Why is it not part of the Magento core, the view models registry? Yeah, you'll love it if you know it. So excuse me for those who have no experience with the view module registry, but having all the view models available in your template without having to define them within layout XML, this should be part of the Magento core. Oh, more code. Got me. So it's so easy to just have any view model within reach in a template, because this is more technical. But if you don't have this view model registry, you have to declare the view models in the layout XML. For Magento developers, they'll know about the layout XML, and then you can only use it at that instance. But the template and the layout XML are not strictly coupled. So you never know for sure in your template if the view model is available or not. This is a great solution. Well done. Minimal frustration. Third aspect of working with Hyvä. And frustration is a part of coding because it's part of the drive to find the best solution, to run into obstacles and overcome them. There is always frustration, but you want to have it at minimal. First off, no more UI components. That's such a relief. This saves a world of pain. It's just analog to frustration. Anyone, any Magento 2 front-end developers here who like working on the checkout? Raise your hands, everybody. Yeah, the Hyvä Checkout. Exactly. That's my point. So Tailwind again, yeah. You don't have to invent class names. A colleague of mine told me that. You don't have to invent class names that are never future-proof because things evolve. And you set out and build a great component with very thought-of class names. You can either also use BEM or object-oriented CSS or atomic design, but eventually things will evolve. And things will change, and your class names may not represent that what it intended to be. No fear of breaking stuff. This one again. Yeah, it's that important that I have to mention it twice. But also, so no fear of breaking stuff you don't touch. Also, it reduces regression bugs, which if with classical CSS, you think, oh, I'm going to change this thingy. Yeah, oh, it's only being used over here. I'm very sure. I think I'm very sure. So you change the styling over a certain part, and on another part, on another page, something topples over. And besides, who here dares to confidently remove styling from a style sheet once you have deployed it? No. Classical CSS always grows. It's one of the frustrations that the developer of Tailwind CSS had and wanted to overcome. That's why it's optimized by default, because only the classes that are actually being used or whitelisted are eventually in the CSS file. So everything you don't use, also if you don't use it anymore, is no longer in the CSS. Optimized by default. Great. And then about Alpine CSS, it has a proper browser plugin. Maybe someone has taken a look at the Knockout.js browser plugins. There's two of them. They both. Yeah, I was indeed gonna say that, but someone has put sweat and tears into making that product. But they're not great. This is all you need, instead of a bloated screen of parents and child, and parent-child, parent-child. Well, this is all you need to debug anything in Alpine.js if you run into something that frustrates you. So we have tools that work with us instead of Luma's tools that kind of work against us. And if you still get stuck, well, there's the Hyvä documentations. It's extensive. It's got lots of examples. It's got documentation of most of all of Hyvä's concepts, features, and patterns, such as models, great, SVG icons, and how to make your own set. Still stuck, Slack support. I'd mentioned it already. Support is great. You'll probably get response from Willem, the other Willem, or Vinay, because they are very, very quick to respond. And there's a whole enthusiastic community of developers there who can help you out with very qualitative information and help. And if you're still stuck, maybe it's a bug, so you can file a bug in the GitLab, and core team will take a look at it. Any bad stuff? It can't be only praise. I'm sorry. There's third-party modules, and so it's not Hyva's fault, but not every third-party module developer apparently creates modules that are compatible with Hyvä. But it is being solved because of the force to be reckoned with, which is Hyvä. So there are already third-party developers who have their own Hyvä compatibility modules. And there's a Git repo of Hyvä themselves, where the core team of Hyvä creates compatibility modules for third-party libraries. So if you run into if you have a third-party library and you need compatibility with it, you may post it and say, hey, I really like to have this third-party module being compatible with Hyvä. And if plenty of others do the same and give a thumbs up, then it shifts up in the priority. And if even that does not resolute, you can make your own compatibility module because you have the great tools to work with to make it. Then there's templates overrides. There's templates overrides everywhere. It's a logical result of using utility classes because you have to use it, because every styling change you have to do in the template files, no longer in CSS files. So you'll end up with quite a lot of template overrides, which is no issue until you start upgrading, which I've done lately. And it's not hard, but it's tedious because you will have to check a lot of Git diffs compared to your own template overrides. And there's this. If you work a lot with Hyvä, and working with Luma sucks even more. Okay, so to wrap up, what is business as usual like? Very nice. Yes. It increases this developer happiness. We see this. We see this in our developers, but we see this also in the effect that an increase in developer happiness has. So our project managers notice this because of an increase in productivity or lower estimates for certain features. And shop owners see this in an increased engagement because of the front-end developers who are actually happily doing their development work for their shops. And they know it. They already knew. Much more enjoyable. Yes, working with Hyvä is much more enjoyable. This is from the Hyvä website, of course. And they know it because developers such as me even go through the trouble of creating a whole presentations about how much they love it. And I gladly did it. So I hope that besides the more obvious and more quantitative reasons to choose for Hyvä, such as it is the best performant Magento front end, it improves user experience, it reduces complexity, time to market, that I have highlighted the value and the effects of developer happiness and how Hyvä has increased this. And I invite shop owners and tech leads and developers, Magento or not even Magento developers, to take a look and consider Hyvä for the sake of of happy developers. It's kind of obvious if you already know Hyvä, but you can take a look at hyvä.io for Hyvä. You can also take a look at our website, because, hey, if you want to have a shop built with Hyvä, we can do it, happily. And you can also take a look at Tailwind CSS and Alpine.js, even if you do not work with Hyvä or Magento at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaas. Are there any questions for Klaas? Wow, so clear. Apparently very clear. Now we have to check with Martin. Are there any questions from remote viewers?
No, everything was very clear. It was very, very, very clear. It's very nice.
Very nice.
Very nice.
But now it's 7 minutes past 5. Can we now have drinks, or has this time now passed?
Oh, what a question. Let's have drinks, shall we?
Yes. Let's have drinks. Okay, guys.
Let's be back in 10 minutes.
Yes? Yes? Is this thing on? Hello? Hello? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the second part of the meetup. Wow. Too much drugs, man. That's across the street. Well. Take your seats, please. It's time for the second part of the meetup. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Staat open. Okay, welcome back. Well, let's continue with the keynote of the evening by Willem from Hyvä himself, from Hyvä headquarters. Is there a headquarters? Tiny. It's in your apartment behind the bedroom. Okay, so Willem from Hyvä will go more into depth about technical stuff and that sort of things, and about the future developments and what's more to come. So we are very anticipating a beautiful presentation and, well, eager to hear your talk, Willem. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, very small office we actually have in the south of the Netherlands, where it's typically just me and our front-ender Frank working on location, and the other 6 members of the team work remotely. So yeah, we're modern like that. So I'm going to focus today on our new product, the Hyvä Checkout, which you've already heard a little bit about from the earlier talks, and I'm here to give more in-depth information on how we built that and what it does and why we think it's pretty good. To start off, Hyvä is Finnish. It has a couple of meanings: good, desirable, trustworthy, and it's kind of grown into a vibe. It's the character of the company. We're here to make a positive impact. We founded in 2020. We launched the first version of the team in February 2021. We're now a team of 8 people. Our customers are in 55 plus countries. Over 500 agencies now work with Hyvä. And there's over 1,600 stores live running Hyvä, of which roughly 5% is running on Adobe Commerce or Enterprise, or how you want to call it. I still think Enterprise makes more sense as a name, but everything's commerce. And we've built a vibrant ecosystem and community, and it's been topic of the previous talks as well. The lack of extensions and modules was a downside when we just began, but then we kind of took over the whole ecosystem and market, and convinced all of the extension developers or the extension vendors that they should really invest in Hyvä, because it's just a lot easier to do that than to make it compatible with a headless solution where there's no extensibility system, so it's kind of hard to create an extension. Click next. And okay, it's a bit lagging. Since we launched in 2021, this is a public growth map, or like a live store tracker for Hyvä teams. You can compare it if you go to buildwith.com. You compare it with the other Magento front-end solutions, and it's, I think, fair to say that we have the most appealing growth trajectory at this point. I think this topic has been covered for the evening. One of the things that I think our product excels at is developer happiness, and that trickles through the whole organization and everybody involved in the process, up to the eventual customer visiting the web shop. Everyone just gets a little bit more positive or a better product to work with or to be in contact with. It has proven, well, it's even proven in this evening that we've actually seen proof of at least 2 people who are very happy with it. How did we build a checkout that hopefully achieves the same thing and also sparkles joy with developers and everyone who works with it? That'll be the topic of this presentation. I got the sense that so when I've skipped a bit, so that's because of the delay between the click and the presentation. Developer happiness, e-commerce made happy. It's been our tagline for a while now, and this one we just had, and now we go to lessons learned. Concerning the checkout, has also been talked about before this evening. We have a React checkout that I actually personally started building even before I started Hyvä. It was semi-headless, completely dependent on GraphQL, and was built with React, super fancy, and I really enjoyed it. I was so depressed with Luma that even this was great to me. And then at some point I started to dislike it more and more because it has all the complexity of a headless application with context management, state management, keeping the state between front end and back end in sync, and everything that eventually gives you headaches and makes the experience less enjoyable. I think a lot of the modern JavaScript tools are enjoyable to work with, but the current issue in that ecosystem is that they're developing at such a rate that you need to keep up and you need to renew your tools every 3 months. So whatever you launch today is old tomorrow. And as an agency, you can't depend on one tech stack because you need to keep evolving. So the product that you launched a year ago now gives you headaches because all the libraries are outdated. And eventually the merchant will also feel that because they need to pay for a product that now needs to be upgraded to a whole new version of that library, or even move from Redux store to hooks, and you know, it's every 6 months is a different state manager introduced. So that's one of the things that made us realize at a certain point the React checkouts was a bit distant from the developer experience that we have with the team. And there are definitely people today working with the React checkout that really enjoy it, and it's super extensible. It's easy to build whatever checkout experience you want with, but you need to be a seasoned React developer to be able to do it. And it's not really, as was said before, it's a toolbox. So out of the box, you need to implement the things that you needed to do. So there's always a development cycle before you have a working checkout with that solution. I don't want to say that the React checkout that we built and is now completely maintained by community, mostly Rajiv, someone I used to work with before, very talented JavaScript developer, so he does a great job. But yeah, for the typical developer working with Hyvä, they're just happy that they don't need to work that much with JavaScript. And then you have a checkout that's completely built with JavaScript, so there's a disconnect there. And then finally, GraphQL performance is definitely better than Luma performance, but could be better. And then I got contacted by Willem Wigman roughly 1.5 years ago, slightly longer. He said, yeah, I'm so inspired by what happens in the Laravel community, and I've been dabbling around there a little bit and got super enthusiastic about their whole ecosystem. And I used to be super enthusiastic about Magento, but now I'm not so much. And then I saw Hyvä, and that inspired me even more because you're bringing things from Laravel to the Magento world, and I want to do that with another little library from the Laravel world, Livewire, which kind of takes all of the JavaScript away from the front end and moves that logic to the back end. So for PHP developers, which is the home of most Magento developers, they love to work with PHP, and we can move all of the complex bits to the back end, so front-end developers can do what they really enjoy, and that's making things look pretty and be productive in just building an interface. And that's the biggest issue with Checkout, is that there's so much front-end complexity, and Checkout in itself is so complex that a front-end developer has a really hard time. They need to learn how the whole Magento framework works before they can apply that logic to the front end. So they need to be a very, very back-end agnostic front-end developer. Hence, most people don't want to touch the checkout in Magento. I'm looking at a different, yeah, okay. So Livewire, as I just quickly said, it takes JavaScript from the front end and puts it into the back end. I'll show a little bit how that works in practice. This is the about page from Livewire. I think the third quote is interesting. Livewire is a full stack framework for Laravel that makes building dynamic interfaces simple without leaving the comfort of Laravel. So it can do a lot of things that single page applications allow you to do in front-end interactivity. It's just that the JavaScript doesn't live on the front end. How that works, I'll show. Then MageWire, what Willem Wigman took and turned into a Magento version, is a port that has the same capabilities, but then it's built for the Magento framework. And I'll show a little bit what the examples are in practice. But I think especially PHP developer experienced in Laravel and especially Livewire, they would really enjoy working with MageWire on top of the rest of the Hyvä team's tools. Because Livewire is built by the same developer who built Alpine.js. So it just works together seamlessly. In Livewire, you typically work with 3 different files to create an interactive component. You have a PHP class, you have a template render file, and you have a front end. What for Magento is a HTML file, it's your template file. Logic lives in the PHP file, so here's a super simple component that renders a view, and you bind it with syntax to render a template file. Main point, there's 3 touch points in Livewire when you build a component, and there's also 3 points in Magento with MageWire. There's a PHP class that you see in the left top. It's a counter class, and it sets a public variable. On the right, you see a HTML file, and it has an input file that kind of links that counter variable to this input field. So that's a variable that you defined in the back end, and you just wire it to a component in the front end. And all you need to do to hook those 2 files together, the PHP file and the HTML file, is pass the class, the PHP class, to that template file with layout.xml. And here you see an example on the left bottom. You see that there's wire click add one. So there's a JavaScript function add one, which isn't really a JavaScript function. You call it as a JavaScript function, but it runs on the back end. So you see a public class add one, and it does counter plus plus, and there's a feedback loop, and in the front end, the variable is updated, but you did not write JavaScript to do this. Super powerful. So this brings all of the power to PHP. It shifts logic and state handling to the backend. And as I touched on with single-page applications or PWAs, you have the challenge that your front-end state represents your back-end state. And that requires a lot of logic on both ends to make sure that if you enter a coupon code on the front end, it's added to the quote on the back end, and the front end renders the right prices and shows the right coupon that's applied. But then if your session expires on the back end, front end needs to update, and handling all of that logic, especially something as complex as a checkout, requires a lot of thought. And with MageWire, it's very clear. The backend already has all of that logic. It already knows what your session is, who you are, what's in your cart, and the front end just only displays it. So you don't duplicate content logic in front end and back end. So when Willem Wigman started talking to me, he started Twitter DMing me like, hey, what do you think? I made this little thing, and do you think it's interesting? And I said, you're hired. What for? We'll think of something. I think this fits perfectly into Hyvä as a product. And he had all these example things like, okay, he built a calculator in Magento using MageWire, and there's some add to cart feature. And he had a whole set of little components. So we started talking. First I hired him, then we started talking what he would build, and we said, well, let's tackle the most complex thing and the thing that people hate most. Let's take checkout. And he said that might take me a while, and I said, carte blanche, build it and make it great. And I think we went through 3 iterations of how we implemented the layout system, for example. Just because we wanted to have that developer experience and that freedom of building the things that you think of, like just being able to, what if I would swap shipping and billing address? Tell this to a Luma checkout developer and he will resign. With MageWire, it's as simple as changing some layout XML directive and say, well, you are now in this step, and you are now in that step. So we're now a good 1.5 years further along, and 1 eternity later, we had a working demo of a checkout over a year ago, and that was before we even did one of the biggest refactors of the layout system, because it wasn't hard to build one checkout. I reckon most developers working with Magento would be able to build a checkout from scratch for one project. Then the challenge is, how do you build a developer experience that makes it enjoyable, extendable, reusable, performant? You need to get all the payments and shipping integrations and everything. You need to be able to, if you have a B2B storefront, have an extra step, build in a whole extra step that shows terms and agreements, for example. So many things that that we accounted for in the framework that we built for this checkout, that we think it's now the tool that will empower developers to, if you say, hey, what about adding an extra step and putting checkout agreements in there, and then put some extra validation there, and I want to send an email in between steps so that they get a confirmation of that terms and agreements. And with this checkout, I'm fairly certain the developers will fight over who gets the task to do it, because this will be enjoyable for a PHP developer. It has the exact right amount of frustration or like resistance to like find out how it works, and it's what PHP developers love most. It's like the challenge of, I don't know how it works yet, but I'll figure it out. And you get the tools that help you to build that instead of, well, tools that work against you. This is a screenshot of our one-step layout. It comes with, the checkout currently comes with 3 layouts pre-configured. and you can switch them in the backend. So you can simply say, I want to have the one-step or the two-step configuration. We also have a layout for mobile devices, which is automatically loaded for certain browsers. So it looks for the browser header. So basically, you could create your own layouts and apply that only to Android phones. Whatever. But I will show the layout system is super extensible. It fits nicely in how Magento does things with layouts. Think of widgets and showing static blocks on certain extension points in the front end. This checkout, you can add an extra step, change the order of steps, take a component that's shown on just one block or in multiple blocks, and also just building your own layout will be straightforward. So this is the first step of the two-step, and then the second step. So this is the second step before you confirm the order. And one of the things that we think is a killer feature, as with Hyvä Team, Hyvä Checkout is super performant. There's no extra JavaScript rendering on the front end. If the backend serves you the checkout page, it's ready to be loaded. So rendering on the front end is instantly. Even though you have isolated components that all are interactive to the backend, that happens with individual AJAX requests as soon as you interact with a component. So no extra requests are being made until you interact with the page. And those interactions run roughly between 500 milliseconds and a second, depending on what you're changing on the quote, of course, which is fast considering you're updating the quote and rendering a new page every time you do that. And everything, I skipped through it, but that gives us time to talk through the rendering. The MHWire components are PHP classes, and they're just Magento PHP classes, so they're extendable with DI, preferences, plugins. Very familiar for a PHP developer. So this is what we all dread. It's the Luma checkout. Was taught before this evening. You have 348 requests to render a Luma checkout page, and on a desktop, fairly fast desktop machine, the page finishes in 2 seconds. Let's say it's interactive after 1 second, which is on a desktop maybe acceptable, still not great. Because the page builds up, you see loading spinners and everything. You want to click something, immediately start typing, but you can't yet, and then everything jumps on your cursor. Typical Magento rendering. Then compared to that, this is the Hyvä checkout, and it finishes in 444 milliseconds. And it loads 7 files in the entire page. This is not only JavaScript, this is including JavaScript and resources. So it's lightweight and performant. Then on mobile with 3G connection, so that's typical not having Wi-Fi connection. It loads in 1.77 seconds, fully loaded in 2.36 seconds, but the full page load is 1.77 seconds on a slow device, slow mobile phone. Which is, you could say, it's a time that Luma takes on a desktop, and I think this is important because the checkout experience is where you actually that's where you make the money. If people exit here, you lost your sale. And no matter how good the rest of your website is, checkout is where you convert. So converting on Luma with a fast 3G connection on a mobile phone, it takes almost 14 seconds to load. The full page load time is 31 seconds. I don't know, but by then I've had 10 notifications and I'm either on Twitter or Instagram or answering emails. I'm definitely not still waiting for this shop to load unless I really want to have that product that I put into the cart. So this is your cart abandonment, and this is excluding extra extensions for reward points or whatever, which will only add more load to this page. So this is your optimum. While we wait for the images, yeah. So here's another. Here's them in one screen. The 3G fast 3G connection mobile phone. It's 13 times faster on Hyvä out of the box. And then in the bottom, I took some numbers from a state-of-the-art PWA application, might or might not have been built by Adobe, and that takes almost 9 seconds. So it's still like if you take the finish time, we're still 5 times faster roughly than a modern PWA application. So that's conversion rate. I think you might even want to consider putting the Hyvä Checkout on a PWA application if you want to convert well. The checkout is super flexible, extendable, because we use all the nice stuff from Magento that's built into the framework, and we replicated that for the checkout to work in a similar way and to make it extendable through Layout XML. So any MHR component is loaded as a view model. It's passed from Layout XML into a PHTML file, and then you have a MHR component. It's literally all it takes. And then as soon as you've turned a PHTML file into a MHR component, you get magic methods to add, set, get values. So here's an example of what our coupon code component looks like in the checkout. On the left, you see the PHTML file. It's simplified, but the relevant part is the input field for the coupon code and then the button to submit the coupon code. On the right, you see a simplified PHP file that belongs, it's the MHR PHP file. And you can see we declare a public variable coupon code. There's a lifecycle method, so there's certain things that you could do in a MHR component when it's initialized, when it loads, when it's reloaded, so you can hook into those events. One of those events is boot, and on boot we check the checkout session, we get the coupon code and set it to that public variable. And that's all we need to be able to take that coupon code on the left top, and we set it to our Alpine component. The coupon code is taken here from the MHR component, so it's just on the MHR object, you can interact with your MHR component. In the input field, we show the value of the coupon code if it's already on the quote, set on the quote. And then interestingly, on the submit button, we have a save action that is either revoke or apply coupon code. So if there's a coupon code set, it uses, if it's not set, it runs apply coupon code. And in the next screen, you can see that apply coupon code method, which is just fairly straightforward Magento PHP code to interact with the quote. Through the section, you get the quote, you set the coupon code, and then you can dispatch a success message or a warning. And we emit an event, coupon code applied, and that is a JavaScript event that's fired on the front end, and that means you can hook into that event in any way you want. If you want to, if you want to show a pop-up at any point when a coupon code is entered or removed, or you want to interact in any way with it, if you want to slide out the cart if the coupon code is changed, or anything. So you take any component on the page and you listen for that event and you hook into it. So that's also, from the back end, you trigger things on the front end that easily. And then all you need to hook those two things into each other. You see here in Layout XML, we have a block It's only rendered when the config for discount code enable is true. So in the admin, you enable it, and then it renders this block, and it's hooked into MageWire by passing that the PHP class that you saw before. So then the layout and stepping mechanism, which I said is so super flexible and defining your own steps and layouts, it lives in a new Hyvä Checkout XML file. Every step can be conditional, so you can define PHP conditions like what customer class, customer group is it, if it's a B2B. If you want to add an extra step for a B2B customer, you can just write your own PHP condition, check the customer group, and if it matches, activate a second step or a third step that shows those checkout agreements, for example, that I talked about. And you can extend those layouts, and you can configure, enable them from the Magento admin, and even use user agents to activate certain layouts. That Hyvä Checkout file looks like this. I don't know if it's very readable. In short, you have one big container that's a checkout. It has a name, a label, and a layout. You can define which layout you want to use. If it's a 1-column, 2-column, 3-column, you define that in a separate XML file, so you can build your own layout for the checkout and toggle it here. You can have a different layout per step as well. You can see in that checkout container, we have 3 steps here. The login, the shipping, and the payment. And the login has some conditions. It's only being shown if is customer is true, or if guest, if it's currently a guest. So if it's not a guest, we don't show it. If it's not required to log in, we also don't show it. So those are simple requirements to enable or disable that first step. These are some of those pre-configured conditions that you that are defined, and you see the 6 by default, and you can extend them through layout XML. Just add them to the same argument list through layout XML, and you can just inject any condition you can think of just by using PHP. This is the isGuest validator. So there's a condition, get is customer's guest, and it returns that, and that's one method that you only need for that condition. Here you see on the top you have default checkout, the checkout name default. That's what we just saw expanded. And beneath it you see this checkout name mobile, which is the one that's enabled if you have this mobile user agent. And this extends, so the mobile checkout extends the default checkout. That's here, you define the parent, and you say what layout you want to use. So instead of the 3-column or 2-column layout, we use a 1-column layout here, and we give it a label, and that's visible from the admin, so you can select that layout through the admin. And then we rename one step. The payment and review step we rename to payment on mobile because we add an extra step for summary after it. So there's an extra step that we have on mobile. So renaming a step, so that immediately works into your stepping, your breadcrumb on the top, like the progress bar, and the back and continue buttons in the checkout are all updated based on these labels. So now that we have a layout mechanism, we can start adding blocks to those layouts, to those steps. So we define a bunch of components. We have a lot of pre-built components that live in Hyvä Checkout XML. And I can show it here, yeah. So this file is called Hyvä Checkout components, and that's more or less just a one big container that we filled with MageWire components that you can then define into certain blocks in your layout. So, for example, I can show that a bit more concrete. This is in the same file. Scroll down. You have this coupon code block, and that's being shown in quote summary. So here we defined, which I also showed earlier. This is where the block is defined with the MHY component. So here the coupon code lives, and this is how we actually take that coupon code out of our big container of MHY components and move it in an actual layout. So we have our layouts in one place, we have all of our components in another place, and then with one simple layout XML directive, we say, okay, so this one comes out of the bucket and we put it into that step or that container and into multiple steps. In this example, this is a Hyvä Checkout layout 2 columns XML file. So that applies to any checkout page with 2 columns. And it works like with Magento standard layout XML, that you can target a layout or a certain block through the file name of the XML. So here we move the quote summary section into the right column, and that's on 2 column pages, layouts. And here you see Hyvä Checkout mobile summary. So that's on the mobile layout in the summary step. So that's the exact location where this is being applied is in the layout XML file name. And I can move it. Into the main column here. So it's the same principle as the previous one, but in the previous one we put it in the right column. Here, put it in the main column. And then here's a layout handle for the virtual checkout. So if default virtual is active, we remove the shipping summary and the addresses, the form fields, and we take the shipping totals out of the totals block. So it's super diverse and flexible in configuring it any way you want. And in the billing details, we changed the template file to virtual billing details because just small differences, like you don't say use same as shipping address, so it's a different HTML file if you have a virtual card. So that was kind of technical, maybe hard to follow from just slides. I hope it gave a good impression of how close it is to standard Magento development, Magento backend development, how much we reused of the logic and systematics that Magento has by default. And I think there's all of these little things that will help you to do cool things. I think once you start building things with MageWire, and you think, oh, I wonder if I could also do this and this, and then you find out 2 ways to do it. And with the layout system that we built, I think we made it very solid towards the future to make it more extendable. We have plans to create more layouts with more steps. You see a lot of big e-commerce stores, especially in the Netherlands, that have like up to 6 steps. Like if you go to Coolblue or bol.com, Coolblue, I think, has 6 steps in the checkout. If you have a merchant that says, I want to have my checkout just like Coolblue, it's a matter of pulling all of the components out of those 3 steps and putting them into 5 steps, and you're halfway there. So we launched the checkout as a separate commercial product. I think it's really a product on its own that will also earn itself back in conversion alone, let alone the time that developers that you reduce in development time in customizations. I think previously adding a newsletter checkbox will have taken you 2 days of development and QA time, and with this it probably takes 1 hour and then some QA. Maybe in 2 hours you would have a feature like that. And while we build out the ecosystem around this and work on payment integrations and extra functionalities, we have quite some features in mind that we can build on top of this. So yeah, what you see now is really like you could say it's still in its infancy. Like all of the potential is there, and I think we can build a lot on top of this. So in next steps, currently we're working with P2P, payment service providers. Some were very eager to immediately jump on board during the beta period already, like Molly, MultiSafePay. We worked on PayPal ourselves, and one of our customers, or one of the agencies that works with Hyvä, already launched partial Amazon compatibility. Adyen, Braintree are going to be officially supported. Stripe we're working on, and I think that the list will become very long. Like every country has their specific payment methods. I think what's telling is that the speed in which the payment providers launch these payment methods is super promising. MultiSafePay attended one of our hackathons during the beta period of the checkout, and they hadn't touched anything of the MageWire or the Hyvä Checkout yet. And two of their developers worked half a day on integrating their ideal, like the bank transfer payment method. And they presented it by the end of the day, like this was enjoyable, and we got along so fast. And I think one more day and we can finish all of the other payment options. So that was super promising. So I think also the effort that will be needed to get a lot of support for payment methods, and we're working with postal code integrations, and well, we'll try to get as much shipping providers. We'll try to get as much as that officially supported. We're currently in the early access of the product. That means that existing customers of the Hyvä team can now buy a license with a 50% discount, which was actually, I skipped over that in the previous step. This is the current product page. If you go to our website, you can find the checkout page. This product comes with paid updates and support after the first year, so that's optional, but it's likely you will like to get those new features and updates after a year, which enables us to continuously keep developing and improving this product and work on those integrations and everything. So if you're already working with Hyvä, decide to buy a team today, you can buy the checkout with that and get started right away. We run it as an early access because there's limited payment support right now, and we're still running into those unexpected conditions that we couldn't test. Like you can never predict if people actually start building websites with it, what crazy conditions they run into because they have this or that module installed, or they configure it exactly in that way that something breaks. So there are stable checkouts running in production, some for quite a while already. So I wouldn't call the product unstable, but during the development process, you might run into things that gives us new things to do to find out how we best resolve those exceptions or problems. So yeah, as soon as we have good coverage for payment and shipping integrations, and it feels more like it's a product that you install, select your payment methods, and you don't even look at how you design things. So it's plug and play out of the box. Around that time, we'll be closing the early access program, and we're working on Luma support. I think a standalone version of this checkout to be used with Luma. A lot of people, I think, will be happy to at least stop using UI components in the checkout if they're still working with Luma. So that opens up a whole market of people that haven't touched Hyvä before and get to experience the checkout. So yeah, we're super excited about this product, and I think it really finishes up the whole customer journey on a Hyvä store. From the first page until the last page, everything's performant and enjoyable to use. And as a developer, you can finally get rid of working with Luma. I guess it's the dream of any Magento developer. So yeah, thank you. That's what I have. Yes.
was wondering, are you planning to use MageWire in Hyvä Teams itself?
We might in the not so near future, and here's why. I think MageWire is super cool and easy to learn, but it is something new that you need to learn. So it's an addition to the tech stack, and the team stack currently is so lean that it's very quick to get started with. And this would add more complexity to the rest of the whole team, which makes the barrier a little bit higher for people to start working with Hyvä. For the checkout, I think for the checkout, it really makes sense. I think it also really makes sense to use in a team, because quick add to cart or elements in your mini cart or configurators, those would be perfect to build with MageWire. I think ideally we would get an ecosystem of MageWire components that you can use with the Hyvä team optionally. So more like the extension ecosystem would pick it up and start building things using MageWire as well. So it's an optional addition, because the checkout in a way still also is optional to use with the Hyvä team. So we don't force that extra learning curve onto people with the checkout. So that's why for now, if things really pick up and MageWire would be like common knowledge for any PHP Magento developer in 2 years' time, why not? Yeah. So far, a lot of people like it. We have some agencies that started working with the checkout very early, and those developers loved it so much that they just went and they rebuilt the cart page with MageWire, and they bloody love it. So I think there's a lot of potential for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Microphone swapping. First of all, great. Looks great. Thank you. I have a question about those MageWire components. I saw a little bit of code on your screen, having a PHP class and methods like do stuff. But I also saw public properties. Being a backend developer myself, I can only give a perspective from my backend point of view. Bluntly said, that is a very bad practice to do so. So is there a reason providing it like this, or is there a way to not use public properties and do it different?
No, this is literally how Livewire works and how MageWire works. Making a variable public there means you can access it in the front end. Without that, you have nothing to build your components with on the front end. So that's inherent to how this technique works. I can't go into detail, like I'm not that much into how Livewire or MageWire was built. I'm sure you can raise that question with my colleagues Willem Wigman or Vinay, and they would have a much better answer to that than I have. It doesn't even ring a bell. Like I wouldn't be able to tell you or verify if that's in fact insecure. I know that a very large ecosystem is built on this, so I'm not sure if it's the case that it's insecure. I don't know why this would be an insecure practice.
No, I'm not saying it's insecure. It's well, it violates several reasons. Well, rules. Or what? How do you call it? Principles. Yes, thank you. Which date back to the early 2000s already. So it was a question. It just popped in my head.
Yeah, this could be similar to when people that see Tailwind the first time say it's not BAM, and then they start working with it. Say this makes so much sense. Might be similar. I'm too unfamiliar with those best practices of public. I know I never encountered them in Magento development as a PHP developer, so I understand it might be unconventional. I can't say much more.
No, it's fine. You don't have to defend yourself. Right?
It's the first thing I'm gonna learn more about tomorrow. I'm gonna ask my colleagues what
Maybe I will also. Thank you.
Yeah. No, okay, so you ask it on our Slack, and I'll read along, and I'll take popcorn and enjoy how good the answers are.
Okay, cool. How can we join Slack?
Your colleagues can invite you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. Question. Is it true that as of yet the checkout is only compatible with the 1.1 version of the Hyvä theme?
No.
So you can, considering the fact that the 1.1 theme uses Tailwind and Alpine version 2?
No, it's I'm pretty sure it even works just on both versions, 1.1 and 1.2.
Okay.
So no, it works on the latest, like on our demo environment, it runs 1.2 theme and the latest version of the checkout.
Oh, so it doesn't matter which Tailwind version or Alpine version you're using?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any more questions? Well, then I think a final round of applause for Willem. And
thank you. And many thanks for organizing this this great get
you're more than welcome. We were happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, I think their pizzas are already arrived in the back, and that we could eat.
Yeah. For the viewers at home, I just wanted to say a few things.
No pizza for the people at home?
No.
Damn.
Pisani.nl. So the Coven of Wisdom, if you're at home and you're watching this from YouTube, and I couldn't make it to Eindhoven because Eindhoven is it's too far from me, and you live in Amsterdam or maybe in Utrecht or maybe in Herentals in the silent Kempen of Belgium. Well, we have Covens of Wisdoms there. Go check out our meetup groups. We link to them very often, or you can check out covenofwisdom.io, which currently still links to our meetup group, but will soon link to all the meetup groups. That's just what I wanted to say to the viewers at home. So,
thank you, Martin.
That bombshell.
Pizza.